This is my video presentation for COMP482's final project and design. The first time I recorded this, I was up to 25 minutes, so I'm going to go through this quickly and include the presentation with the report. So who is this guy? I work for a large company in Atlantic, Canada. I'm also a student with Athabasca. I work in an eclectic role that includes analytics, innovation, development, and R&D. This is a real initiative and it is a real system that will be implemented. I very much believe in an iterative process. So if I can get a product to 70 or 80% complete and move it into production, I'm happy, because after that I end up in more of an evaluation cycle. So for me, perfect is the enemy of good. So the purpose and scope of this project. So the purpose of the system is to provide an easy way for the Vice President of Information Technology to view, print, and share information relating to ongoing initiatives related to analytics and innovation. It's not meant to be project management software. It's meant to provide an easy way to view the portfolio of initiatives that are ongoing, closed out, or pending. Its intent is to avoid duplication of efforts, provide one source of the truth, greater clarity of ongoing initiatives, and standardize the collection process. The scope is anywhere up to the full 15,000 employees across our company. However, the solution is tailored for the two primary departments, being analytics and continuous improvement, who have about 15 employees each. It was requisitioned by the VP of Information Technology, so there's a strong sponsor. The system needs to be available 24/7 on our internal network, not externally available. It is a browser-based solution for COMP482 desktop, tablets, no mobile, and it should be developed without the help of our centralized IT, just for the purposes of timing and scope. The users of the system are all employees in the company, so anyone should be able to at least view some of the information in it. The project managers that work in the analytics and continuous improvement departments, the directors, the vice presidents, and external employees, but external employees should be excluded from accessing the system. The main tasks were identified through interviewing each of the main users of the system, so from the VP, project managers, directors, as well as internal employees. They are categorized based on what must be done, should, could, and exclude. So generally you're following a CRUD process with most things. So project managers want to be able to create, read, update, and delete their projects. They want to add product statuses, view simple summaries. The vice president wants to be able to print an executive summary. The director wants to be able to evaluate projects and view them all. Excluded were the ability to attach files and allocate resources, because this started to push the software more towards project management, which wasn't the intent. Prototypes were developed using Adobe XD. I'll show you that in a second. Prototypes were printed and shared with team members, either through email or conferences. Walkthroughs and evaluations were performed by staff members, not vice presidents and directors, which does introduce a risk that those end users will not get the system that they want. However, in a large organization, it is very difficult to get meetings with vice presidents and directors in a timely manner. The cursory walkthroughs do provide us with directional feedback on how to improve prototypes before storyboarding. So we use the vice president, director, staff as a proxy for their decision making in this process. So I can show you Adobe XD, which is the software I use for all my prototypes. As a disclaimer, XD is not meant particularly for storyboarding. It is mostly for wireframing and generally for web-based solutions. So you're able to create all of your primitives in here and then implement them in JavaScript, CSS, and HTML. So it does provide a very strong segue to web development. You can see over here I have all my storyboards that I created in Adobe XD. This simplifies my design process because it's very easy to share these assets and symbols. It's very easy to duplicate them, and then it's easy for me to implement them in the web, because I can actually go through and say, you know, the fill color, the color of the borders, the radius, everything like that. So Adobe XD is my design tool of choice whenever I'm doing anything for the web. So I'll jump back to my presentation. These are the prototypes. So the first prototype was the standard SharePoint, which is our content management system, and people generally disdain this. These solutions, they're clunky, they're ugly, they're slow, they're very noisy and busy. So this prototype was our baseline. People really didn't like them. Our next prototype moved beyond that into more modern modern approach, more minimalism, subdued color patterns and palettes. So users generally enjoyed this one more, the project managers did. It was missing some information they wanted. The input forms were too basic. They didn't have any default values. The summary wasn't showing enough information, but it did push us in the right direction, which moved us towards prototype number 3, which was actually our final prototype, but addressed most of our issues, and it was chosen as the candidate solution for storyboards and walkthroughs with staff members. Walkthroughs, again, were interesting because the system doesn't currently exist. We use the prototypes to do the walkthroughs. I printed the prototypes and the users completed each task using a printed prototype. I used the storyboards as the baseline and the users' interactions to understand how they're actually going to use it. So an example would be adding a new project. I would take the storyboard, which should be 4 steps, and then compare it to what the user actually did. And we can see we have some variances, some discrepancies where the user lacked knowledge into why they're entering requested completion dates. They don't have motivation to enter information that should be defaulted. The project update, not every project has an update. So this was done for each task with staff members. Particularly, you'll see here with the user who requested it. So I was able to have meetings with the director, but not the VP, but that was fine. The VP's only task was really to print it, so that was pretty quick. So working through that really moved us towards our final implementation, which I'll show you here in a second. The technologies used to create the final product, it's web-based, so you're looking at HTML, JavaScript, and CSS. I would use Visual Studio Code as my IDE, HTML5, ES6, CSS3. I use React as my framework, so part of this project I really wanted to work with a more modern framework to understand the pros and cons and what it could offer. I use Material UI, which are components that are built using React and Google's Material Design. I use Styled Components, which is a CSS library. React does not have an opinion on CSS, which makes it somewhat difficult to implement, so Styled Components simplifies that process. D3.js is the de facto charting library on the web, so I use that to create the evaluation chart. And then SharePoint will be used to host it. Webpack, Babel, Node.js, and NPM are used for our build tools. So I'll jump over here very quickly, show you some things. So this is Material UI. So it's React components that implement Google's Material Design. So if I go through the component demos and say we look at snack bars, which the final product does include, I can click on an example and it actually shows me what it's doing. And then I can look at the source code and start implementing it into my project. Styled components, very similar. It shows me how to style a component using React and JSX. And from that, I can start doing conditional styling and embed it into React components. So this simplifies the CSS immensely. D3.js, you can go through and find their list of examples, which are numerous. But again, this is the de facto charting library. It's how I built the evaluation chart. And I'll show you here in a second. I'll save some time for a quick demo. Design rationale. So really want it to be simplistic, modern, and easy to use. Aesthetically pleasing is extremely important in the business world. Generally, if it looks nice and it's easy to use and pleasant to use, people will be more appreciative and more understanding when there are some features that need to be added later on. I wanted a single page application, so it'd be fluid and easy to use, subtle animations and transitions to move between states, subdued color palettes, again, opportunity to leverage Google's Material Design and Roboto. I wanted context appropriate options, so when you click on the option to create a new project, the only things that you can do are related to creating a new project. Within that context, those are the only options. So let's go through a quick screenshots and demos. So the main screen expanded, new project dialog, the edit project dialog, evaluating the project. So very similar to the prototypes, just cleaned up a lot more. Print summary screen, dialogues when you're deleting projects so that you don't accidentally delete a project. System notifications, which are those snack bars. So we'll switch over to a quick demo here. So this is what the application looks like in real time. It's hosted on AWS through an S3 bucket. You'll see here that I select what type of user I am. When it's in SharePoint, it will do it for us automatically, but for testing purposes, I have to identify who I am so I can see what features are available. I can walk through some of these tasks. So let's say if I'm a project manager, I want to create a new project. I can see that the tooltip identifies that it's a new project. If I create a new project and I don't provide it with a name or description, these things with the asterisks, you'll see I get a warning saying you can't do that. You need to include a name or a description. If I do provide a name but don't provide a description, you'll see that this changes back and it only identifies the one that's missing. So it does provide good error handling in that sense. It defaults to no sponsor, but I can provide one. Defaults to no company, but I can provide one. Requested completion date defaults to today. The project status defaults to new project and is grayed out, so the user knows that it's always going to be a new project when you click new project. I can provide a project description, and project is launching. Now it does tell me I don't need to provide a project update, but we will. I can tab through everything here to make it simpler, so it does provide a little bit of power user, and I can hit create. We'll see it says the product's been created. It's created in real time. The browser doesn't need to refresh. I can see all my things here. The evaluations default to 1 and 1. As a project manager, I can go through and edit this now, so I can give it a better name. Super cool project, updates in real time, lets me know it's been edited successfully. I can delete the project. It'll tell me, hey, you're going to delete the project, it can't be reversed. This was something that was identified in the heuristic evaluation that, as a major issue is we should have redo and undo capabilities, so that will be added in the next release. If I'm the vice president and come up here, you'll see that I no longer have the option to create a new project or edit, but I can print and look at the evaluations. The prints you'll see are actually simplified. It removes most of the jargon and just provides a nice title and the summary. If I have things expanded and I print, it will show you the expanded view as well. So it's very much of what you see is what you get for that. If I'm the director, you'll see I can't create a new project. I can edit the projects, but I can only edit the evaluation. So everything's grayed out here. So I can change this evaluation to a 5 and hit save. And then if I look at the evaluation chart, you'll see I have all my projects shown on the evaluation chart. And I can get out of this very easily through that. Everything has tooltips on it if you can interact with it, so to provide the user with some form of indication of what's going on. If I'm a general guest, you'll notice that everything sort of disappears. It's very simplified. You can't edit, you can't create a new project, you can't see the evaluations, you can't see the project sponsors, you can't see the updates. So this is for the general public to look at to understand what's in the hopper, what's on the go. This is all accomplished through feature masking. So when you log in, it knows who you are as a user and what features you need access to. So it'll do all of that programmatically. To do that in SharePoint, all I'll need to do is change some of the bindings in the back end and hook them up to the Active Directory group. Some final things, we have the ability to sort columns and filter. This also was identified in the heuristic evaluation that there's no indication of what's been sorted or filtered, so that'll be a change in the next release. As well, you don't have the option to filter on more than one thing at a time, so that will be something that we want to add. So overall, pretty happy with the design. I think there'll be some things that I'll want to change as it's moved into production. I'm not overly sold on the card view for a table. I might want to change this to a normal table that expands the whole length. But that's an easy fix. This title I think looked good in the design, but I think in implementation it should probably be up here and which will save me a lot of space. So at the end of the day, I think it was a good project. I think that I'll move this into production sooner than later. I'll clean up a few of the major and minor issues identified in the heuristic evaluation. But working through the project with the class has actually been really beneficial for me because it added more time up front in terms of interviewing and talking to stakeholders and working through prototypes. But building this was relatively easy in the sense that I wasn't guessing at what features needed to be added or how things needed to look. certainly it was difficult enough with React and the component parts and things. It's a fairly complex interface, although it's simple. But being able to do that without having to second guess the features and how it's being implemented was much quicker and much easier than my normal process. So if you have any questions, give me a shout. Overall, I look forward to your feedback.